And the fact that he has had such a sustained following in Turkey and shows a commitment to a moral position in politics and a moral position that is not extreme, but is based upon trying to do the best of combining tradition with modernity. My name is Patrick Drinan, and I'm a professor emeritus and dean emeritus from the University of San Diego. I taught international relations at the University of San Diego for many years. The Hizmet movement became aware of it about 5-6 years ago, which is kind of strange because I'm a student of international relations and a Russian-Soviet specialist, actually, and with Turkey in such close proximity to the Soviet Union and Russia, you'd think I would have heard more about it, but I did not until approximately 5-6 years ago. The Pacifica Institute here in San Diego had a dinner in which they invited interested people from the community in, and so we learned more about the Hizmet movement and about the Pacifica Institute and the dialogue that was so important to the Hizmet movement. And both my wife and I were very impressed by the commitments of the Hizmet movement to dialogue and to friendship dinners, and the moderation of the group. You know, was not surprising to me, but I think it's surprising to many people, even fairly educated people in Southern California, that I know not that much really about Turkish society and the developments in it over the last 20 or 30 years. I've been learning more about Gülen over the last several years, and I have done some reading of his sermons, and have taken a look at the kind of commitments he has made, building upon commitments of earlier thinkers in Turkey. Committing himself to science and education and pro-EU membership, and just a solid message of moderation and cultural dialogue and outreach. And the independence he has shown on many topics, just as we, my wife and I, went to Turkey in 2010. It was the time of it was right after the flotilla had gone down to Israel, and so to find that some of his skepticism about that exercise really told me something about his independence as a thinker and his attempt to have a genuine moderate position in a very pro-modern attitude in Turkish society. I think Gülen has certainly done the kind of outreach in terms of cultural dialogue, and the outreach is not only to academics like myself, it's been to local political leaders, people from the religious communities and the like, and that kind of outreach in terms of building understanding, I think, is one of his greatest accomplishments. And the fact that he has had such a sustained following in Turkey and shows a commitment to a moral position in politics and a moral position that is not extreme, but is based upon trying to do the best of combining tradition with modernity. And I think that is always a difficult challenge in countries that are trying to lift themselves up by their own bootstraps and enter the globalized world. And it seems to me that Turkey, with the great assistance of Fethullah Gulen, has been a model for that to happen. And I think we're learning just too late about that in some ways. We would hope that that model would catch on. And we know that there's a whole variety of attitudes throughout the Islamic world, pro-democratic, pro-modern, sometimes more skeptical of modernity in the West. But we know that there's a whole variety of places in the Arab world and the Turkish world and in Indonesia that can nurture sensibilities that are very consistent with Gulen's message. I think Muslims having dialogue with non-Muslims is very, very important, although I know it's very difficult to do. Religious commitments can be very, very strong, and listening to the voices of other religions is not something that comes easy to any religious movement. And so it takes some training and perspective in order for that to happen. My wife and I both participate in book clubs involving Muslims and non-Muslims, and trying to explore the connections of what prayer life is like in the Islamic world compared to, say, the Christian world. And it takes a while. There are many points of overlap, of course. In the Christian world, we have an attention to the Virgin Mary, and surprisingly, we found that within Islam, there's lots of attention to the Virgin Mary. In fact, there's more in your basic writings than there is in the Christian Bible about the Virgin Mary. So I think it's going to be a long, slow movement. It took decades in the Christian world for there to be good dialogue between Catholics and other Christians, non-Catholic Christians. And so it's not something that can be achieved easily. I think it'll take 2 or 3 generations of openness and sustained kind of listening and cultural interaction for that connection between Muslims and non-Muslims to really flourish. But what I think is that the Gulen movement has established really a fine base in the fact that there is perhaps some conflict and debate about the wisdom of doing it or some of the techniques that are used, I think is very, very healthy. The Hizmet emphasis on education became very, very clear to us during our Pacifica Institute-sponsored cultural tour of Turkey in 2010. A small group of us were brought to not only colleges and universities and secondary schools, but into grade schools. In fact, one of the best times we had in Turkey was being at a elementary school sponsored by the Hizmet Gulen movement, and seeing the volatility and the freshness and the excitement and curiosity of the students there. It seemed very, very healthy to us. There is a joy there that sometimes we don't associate with other religions in terms of their practice. We sometimes see the seriousness of some of the practices of the adults in terms of what they do in prayer, and we don't necessarily pick up the more joyous side of what education can bring in terms of stimulating curiosity and laughter and just the excitement of learning about the world. And we saw that nurtured when we were in Turkey, and we certainly see it in the product of some of the Hizmet-sponsored schools. When we meet engineers here in San Diego at Qualcomm and other places, and to see the warmth, the excitement, and the curiosity that flow from their educational experiences and their professional obligations. Current situation in Turkey, where Erdogan and his party seem to be attacking the Hizmet movement and Gulen and talking about the parallel state and the like, intrigue me. I'm political scientist. I study politics, and even though I'm not an expert on Turkey, it seems to me that this is like the early difficulties in any democracy. I think Turkish politics will outgrow this. I think many of the changes in Turkey, in my view, are irreversible, and in terms of the economic gains and per capita income gains and the like are at a point where further democratization is going to be welcomed, and some of the internal battles that are going on in Turkey I think you'll grow out of them, in my view. I think there could be even more difficult times ahead as the parliamentary politics of Turkey end up becoming a little bit more presidential. And so we look as a political scientist, at some of the possible changes of the Constitution in terms of what a presidency offers vis-a-vis a parliamentary prime minister driven kind of situation. And there can be some awkwardness there. There was awkwardness in France at the Fifth Republic in the 1960s as they moved between a more prime minister versus parliamentary system toward a more presidential system. And it took them about 8 to 10 years to kind of get that right. And I'm not sure if Turkey will go down a similar path to what France has done in terms of that kind of presidential authority. I'm not an expert in Turkish politics, but I will watch it from the outside with great curiosity and with great hope that the future of Turkey will be everything that people can imagine.